The DCE drama has exploded with the Manly skipper calling out what he described as a smear campaign designed to bring him down. Just moments after their inspirational win over the Eels, Daly Cherry Evans lit the fuse and then stood back. Big day today. It's hard to avoid this one with DCE. It's the talk of the town, but it is his first game.
Yep.
How will he play? How will the crowd respond? Much anticipation about this.
Watch and listen to the welcome for Manly and DCE at the head of the queue in game number 333.
Honestly, I was really emotional today when I heard the Hill supporting me. The reception I got today, it made me really proud to be the captain of Manly.
The one thing that I see a challenge for Daly and Manly is the next 4 to 6 weeks, because this story is not going to go away.
I get this decision isn't going to make everyone happy, and I've owned that from the start, but I feel like it could have ended pretty quickly early in the week, but it obviously didn't, which means conversations were continuing to happen outside of the ones happening between the club and I, so that's where I felt like it got a bit nasty and a bit ugly.
Where do you think that smear campaign is coming from?
I know who it's coming from, and it's not appropriate to talk about it. You guys obviously know where it's coming from as well, but I'm old enough and big enough to handle it.
Can I ask you, do you think the media was being fed stuff to write?
Yeah.
By whom?
I'm not sure. Or maybe I am and I'm not telling.
Do you have a timeline when you expect to...
I don't. I know it's going to annoy you. I'm really sorry about that. I really am. That's where the part I understand speculation is going to continue. But I hope you can understand that's why I've given the club time to move on in their direction, and then it will allow me freedom to do my thing in the background. So that's why it is the way it is, so I can take my time.
What a week it was last week for the Manly Sea Eagles and their main man, Daly Cherry Evans, and he handled it with all class on the field. Even before the game, interviewed him live on the Sunday Ticket, and it was very graceful of him to give us his time considering the circumstances. Then he's gone out there and played how we expected him to play, well, how I expected him to play. Great win for the Manly Sea Eagles, but then holds that press conference, or he does the press conference after the match and says that there is a smear campaign against him and directed it at someone. Who is he directing it at?
Well, I think we all suspect he's directing it at the CEO, Tony Mestrov. I think that's the assumption most of us have made, and there's obviously a split in that club. They've talked about no animosity from the start, but clearly Daly had plenty of animosity. That became pretty clear after that game because he made a point of raising that whole concept of the smear campaign. He mentioned it on radio interviews straight after the game. He mentioned it in the press conference. He mentioned it on Fox. I mean, he wanted to make it pretty clear that he wasn't happy with the events of the week. And I think all of us assume that he's referring to Tony.
He was referring to Tony Mestrov, but I do want to say this. I don't think he smeared him at all. Tell you what he did, and we just held the story up. He lied to me, Tony Mestrov, understandably, to protect Daly Cherry Evans.
What do you mean by that?
I rang him 2 weeks ago, and I said, Messi, there's a lot of mail around that Cherry Evans and you are going to part company at the end of the year. And we now know that deal was done in December last year. He said to me when I rang him, and I said, mate, you told me everything was sweet, and everything. He said, mate, I had to. He said, I gave Cherry Evans my word that this would stay in the vault until we're all comfortable about a release and letting the fans know. He said, quote, I just couldn't dog him, was the words he used to me.
So why did Cherry
Evans
go and not do a press conference with the team? Because then it wouldn't be a smear campaign if they both sat there.
Yeah, but just let me finish this. I think Mestrov, and you don't like being lied to, Mestrov did the honourable thing by Cherry Evans, who has accused him of this smear campaign, by protecting him. He was concerned about the effect on the football team after a bright start. He was concerned, and he might have misread it now, of the fan backlash. We didn't know if Ches was going to get booed yesterday or not.
Which he didn't.
So the smear campaign is news to me.
I think he was naive, Daly, or at least his camp were buzzed when they spoke about it. Daly said, I thought I'd front up, talk about it, and it'll all be gone within a couple of days. And I think that was just naive because the club was always going to respond because the club had to defend itself in that situation. And that's what led to some of the stories that came out. So, I appreciate Daly maybe thought that he could he could front the media.
That was never going to happen.
And it'll be over. But whoever was telling him that was what would happen was completely naive about the way the media works.
I got a bit of sense that his manager's ringing anybody that'll listen to smear the Manly organisation.
I know a couple of journos who are quite powerful figures who have received very good briefings from the Cherry Evans camp to make sure their side... And
sure
that's okay. But I'm just saying...
Yeah.
This little PR game is coming from both sides.
It is. It actually is. And I think, they've kind of accused us of defending the club, and then there's, like you said, there's other journalists that are in the DCE camp. But that brings me back to this. What is the actual smear, though? What is he not happy about with Mestrov? There has to be something. Does it date back a long time? Has it just happened over the negotiations? Why has it gotten so bad?
I mean, there's some stories that came out during the week, Braith, that I'm sure he was not happy about. One was that he asked for a release. I think it was the start of 2024, which hadn't come out before.
Is that fact?
As far as I know, it's fact. As far as
so
I'm
if
aware.
that's true, if he asked for a release, how is it a smear campaign?
Well, that's his view. It's a smear campaign. I think most people. The other one was
If it's factual, it's not.
Well,
smear.
the other one was it's about money. There's this perception that's come out that his camp wanted $1 million, $1.1 million, $1.2 million for him to stay there. And I think there's a perception maybe from Daly at least that it got painted as though this was maybe about money. Now, someone tried to tell me today that Cherry's camp never discussed money with Manly. That's ridiculous. What agent or agency doesn't talk to a club about what sort of ballpark figure the player's worth?
Isn't it? That's the first
Well,
thing
I would have thought it was. So
how many years and how much money?
it's not. It was naive to think the club wouldn't defend itself this week, because I think they had to. Because the supporters wanted answers. I'm sure their sponsors wanted answers about how this happened. They had to get on the front foot and they had to explain what happened. And in a way, that's potentially reflected badly on Daly at times.
Now, they got the win. And they did it with ease. They were in cruise control. Great win, especially given the circumstances, we know that. But moving forward, with this animosity still brewing at the club, and we're talking about a captain and a CEO, there's still concerns that they could be derailed at some point.
DCE needs to take his senior players out and have a beer and a steak and talk to them, because the way Jake's, like the loudest voice through the whole week was me, is Jake. Well, I wouldn't do it. And then he come, and that's the stake. And if you're going to put anybody up on a pedestal at Manly over the last 10 years, it's Jake Trbojevic. No one would ever say a bad word about him, and it's like he is the Manly. He is the Steve Menzies of that organisation. So when he come out, I think that's the loudest voice. So he needs to get him back on side, and his brother Tommy.
I want to give another example of Jake's brother Tom. And look, I haven't spoken to Tom for some time, but I just wanted to bring up, when he was crook last year or the year before, missed a number of games. You know what the logo meant to him and the club and the team? He felt that uncomfortable. He went to Mestrov and he went to Penn and say, take my contract money back. He offered up about $400,000 back to the club.
I remember that story.
Because, and you know what? It just shows in this climate, when we've got to stink about whether 750 and $1 million, I just want people to know what that jersey means to the Trbojevic brothers.
But that's how it's not for money, because I come to work for money. Everybody goes to do their job for money.
But they're different people, right? I mean, Daly's always been, and people close to Daly will tell you, Daly's priority in his football career is to set up his family and set himself up, right, for life after footy. Whilst the Trbojevic boys, I think, they've grown up with this football club. It means everything to them. So they come at it I understand they come at it from different angles. And I'm not going to criticise Daly for doing what's best for him, because I said Dylan Brown should take the money on offer in Newcastle. So I'm not going to criticise him for that. But I just think the way he handled it, I think later in life he'll regret the way this week's played out.
Yeah, I think going back to that point about that announcement, I still can't believe that they would think, the team around DCE and DCE himself, that he could make that announcement on TV and think that it wasn't going to be a big deal. It was going to go away. It only made it
Gordon made
worse.
the best point. He should have had a club polo on. Mestrov, Seabold and Penn should have been sitting at a long desk and say,
After 10 years and the money that you've got with that relationship.
Yeah,
and it's
after
not,
15 years, we're going to part.
and it's hard to do, Buzz. I'm sitting here as a 50-year-old, but sometimes it's not the CEO, it's the club, it's the Manly organisation. What, 1947? Mm-hmm. It started, that's who you represent. You don't represent the CEO or the owner. That's who you run out for. You run out for all the past players and every Manly fan that's ever, gone to support this great team. And that's who you go and you talk to. And it's hard to put that cap on.